Pearl Harbor, the attack that woke the sleeping giant. The sun rose over Oahu on December 7, 1941, painting the Hawaiian sky in shades of gold and crimson, colors that would take on a far more sinister meaning in just minutes. At 7:48 a.m., the serene Sunday morning shattered into chaos as Japanese aircraft descended upon Pearl Harbor like a swarm of steel hornets. But here's what most people don't know. This wasn't just a military strike. It was a calculated gamble that would backfire so catastrophically, it would alter the course of human history forever. The breakfast that never finished. 19-year-old seaman James Corey was eating pancakes aboard the USS Arizona when the first bomb hit. He would be one of the few to escape before the magazine explosion that killed 1177 of his shipmates in 9 minutes. Think about that. 9 minutes. The time it takes to make coffee, the ship became a tomb for over 1,000 men. But the Arizona's story conceals a chilling detail. Japanese intelligence had meticulously planned the attack for Sunday morning, precisely because they knew most officers would be ashore, most crews would be sleeping off Saturday night, and the ships would be packed together like sardines in a can. It was warfare as cold calculation. What the architects of this attack, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto and his strategic brain trust, understood was simple. America had something Japan desperately needed: oil, steel, resources that the island nation lacked. The US embargo had strangled Japan's imperial ambitions, and Tokyo faced a choice: back down or strike first. They chose to strike. But Yamamoto himself harbored deep reservations, allegedly saying, "I fear all we have done is to awaken a sleeping giant and fill him with a terrible resolve." He would be proven right in the most devastating way imaginable. The ghost attack that almost wasn't. Here's where the story takes a twist worthy of a thriller. The attack nearly didn't happen. At 7:02 a.m., 46 minutes before the first bombs fell, 2 U.S. Army radar operators, Private Joseph Lockhart and Private George Elliott, spotted something impossible on their screens. A massive formation of aircraft, 132 miles north of Oahu. They called it in, their voices urgent. The response? Don't worry about it. The officer on duty assumed they were American B-17 bombers expected from California. That single miscommunication cost America its greatest advantage: time. Those 46 minutes could have scrambled fighters, dispersed ships, and saved thousands of lives. Instead, the Japanese first wave of 183 aircraft met virtually no resistance. Luck had tilted catastrophically toward disaster. Battleship Row, a sailor's hell. The scale of the devastation defies comprehension. Within 30 minutes, torpedoes struck the West Virginia, Oklahoma, California, Nevada, and Arizona. The Oklahoma capsized so quickly that 429 men were trapped inside. For days afterward, Navy divers could hear tapping from within the hull. Morse code messages from sailors still alive in air pockets, slowly drowning as the oxygen ran out. Rescue crews worked frantically, cutting through steel with torches, but the trapped men were too deep, in spaces too twisted. The tapping eventually stopped. But here's a detail that reveals the human dimension of warfare. Aboard the West Virginia, Captain Mervyn Bennion lay dying from shrapnel wounds. He refused morphine, insisting on giving orders until he physically couldn't speak anymore. Meanwhile, Mess Attendant Doris Miller, an African-American sailor assigned to kitchen duty because the segregated Navy wouldn't let him serve in combat roles, carried wounded men to safety, then manned an anti-aircraft gun he'd never been trained to use shooting at Japanese planes until he ran out of ammunition. He became the first Black American to receive the Navy Cross. War has a way of exposing both the best and worst of humanity simultaneously. The second wave, fury meets resistance. By the time the second wave of 167 Japanese aircraft arrived at 8:50 a.m., the surprise was gone. American gunners, recovering from shock, turned the sky into a storm of anti-aircraft fire. The harbor was ablaze, smoke columns rising thousands of feet, oil slicks burning on the water's surface. Sailors trapped in sinking ships faced impossible choices: drown below decks or swim through burning oil above. Many who chose the water emerged scarred beyond recognition. Yet amidst the carnage, acts of defiance emerged. The Nevada, the only battleship to get underway during the attack, attempted to escape to open water. Japanese pilots swarmed her, recognizing that if she sank in the harbor channel, she could block the entire port for months. The Nevada's crew fought back viciously, their anti-aircraft guns creating a shield of steel, as they deliberately beached the ship to avoid blocking the channel. It was heroism defined by sacrifice, accepting damage to protect others. What the Japanese missed: the fatal oversight. Here's the devastating irony. The attack succeeded brilliantly at everything except its actual strategic goal. Japan sank or damaged 8 battleships, destroyed 188 aircraft, and killed 2,403 Americans. It was a tactical masterpiece, but Yamamoto's plan contained fatal flaws that his officers would recognize too late. The Japanese bombers missed the repair facilities, the dry docks, machine shops, and fuel depots that would allow America to rebuild. More critically, they missed the aircraft carriers. The Enterprise, Lexington, and Saratoga were at sea, and carriers, not battleships, would decide the Pacific War. The Enterprise had been delayed returning from Wake Island by a storm. That storm changed everything. And perhaps most importantly, they failed to account for psychology. Yamamoto understood, even if his superiors didn't, that attacking America wouldn't break its will. It would forge it. The assault united a divided nation overnight. On December 6, polls showed 80% of Americans opposed entering the war. By December 8, recruitment centers had lines around the block. Young men lied about their ages to enlist. Factories that produced automobiles retooled for tanks. America didn't just enter the war, it transformed into an industrial leviathan bent on total victory. The giant awakens. President Franklin D. Roosevelt called December 7, a date which will live in infamy in his declaration of war speech. But the real story isn't the attack itself, it's what came after. Within 6 months, the U.S. defeated Japan at Midway. Within 4 years, American factories produced more ships, planes, and tanks than all Axis powers combined. The sleeping giant didn't just wake up. It stood up, stretched, and demonstrated industrial might the world had never witnessed. The Arizona still lies at the bottom of Pearl Harbor. Oil continues to leak from her hull. Black tears, they call it. About a gallon per day. Over 1 million people visit her memorial annually, standing above the rusted battleship where 177 sailors remain entombed. It's a reminder that history's turning points often arrive without warning, in the most ordinary moments, transforming breakfast time into infamy and isolationism into global leadership. Pearl Harbor wasn't just an attack. It was the moment America stopped looking inward and started reshaping the world. The giant had awakened, and nothing would ever be the same.